and welcome to BNEWS In Depth. I'm your host, Rich Hosford. This month, we are taking a close look at a proposed plastic bag ban that some student activists are working to get in front of town meeting. I'll talk to a couple of them in a moment. I also spoke to Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce President Rick Parker for a take from the business community. But first, here's my conversation with two student members of the group Global Activists and their faculty advisor. All right, now I'm here with the proponents of this bag ban and their faculty advisor. We've got some of the global activists. We've got Ricky Vittum, Stavan Shah, and biology teacher and faculty advisor, as I said, Michael Ress. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
So first, just talk about kind of the group, how it got started, and you know what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So last year, I had Mr. Russ as my biology teacher, and we were going through our environmental unit, and he was laying it on us that something needs to be done to protect our environment because it's not in a good state right now. And really from there, the motivation came to stem some kind of organization that would have students working on activities that would help to reduce climate change and save the environment in the best way that they could. We're getting involved in their community and global efforts. And then just over and over again, I heard about this bag ban that was also passed in other cities and towns in Massachusetts and Chicago and California. So thinking, why not do it for Burlington? So that's why we took up this first project of a bag ban for Burlington in our first year of our organization.
Yeah, we'll get into that a lot. Just talk about what kind of response have you, how many members are in the group, and you know, what kind of enthusiasm do you see among students for getting involved in these type of activities?
Yeah, normally we see around 10 members that will come to our meetings, and they always come in with an enthusiastic attitude. They want to do what they can because they know that they have to do something, and they know that the onus is on them to really drive forward on the environmental impact is on them. They have to do something to decrease that because they're the generation that will be working towards it when they grow up. So if they get started now, everyone in our club realizes that, so they're ready to do it. They step in with an attitude like, we're ready to go, we want to get this passed, we want to do any other project that we can because it's really important to them, so that turns out to motivation.
Club is a good way for people who don't really know what to do. I mean, especially when you have such an issue of, environmental destruction or whatever, the person is worried about what to actually do, and this club provides that, so the bag is just the first of probably many things we'll do.
Excellent. Now I want to ask you, so you inspired this with your, trying to inspire the students and get them involved, and now you're sort of stuck with being the advisor. Now just talk about your thoughts about having kids, students come out and want to tackle some of these issues.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as a teacher, it's important also not to be so hyperbolic about an issue that you want to inspire, but you don't also want to misinform and get them to just, because you want them to do something, you're just going to, exaggerate statistics, so to be accurate and to inspire the kids is important as a teacher, and I do make that a goal. As far as getting them to actually do something, this was a club that I didn't have any intention of really starting, but Stefan was actually the one who was like, all right, so let's do something. And I was like, oh, yeah, all right. So I was.
So you were really listening in class then, huh?
Right. So that is, and I think that's also important, is not to just be spouting like, well, something needs to be done, and then if a kid's like, I would like to do something, not to be like, yeah, well, so I mean, I was excited at the opportunity to actually have a kid that was inspired like this, and it's pretty awesome to see it happen, and I think it's one of those things where I would expect more kids to join as time went on and as kind of word gets around, because during that unit specifically, you get a lot of kids that really do want to get involved, and they wonder what is the next step. And it's not just, oh my God, there's this pressure on us. What do we do? Well, here's something you can do.
Yeah, an avenue to kind of focus.
Right.
And now, so before we get, we'll get into, the problems with the plastic bags. that you have in part of your presentation. But what exactly would this proposed, piece of legislation do?
It really is a bag ban, so it's going to ban all the plastic bags you see in grocery stores, so that there's a lack of plastic bags here and it's not as dangerous to the environment.
And now, is it all bags across, like the ones that you get at the mall as well?
Yeah, it'd be eliminating all single-use polyester plastic bags.
Okay.
However, there are just a few exemptions, such as if you've ever taken like apples or tomatoes in those small little plastic bags by the grocery store,
Yes.
on the food produce market, you can use those bags as well as the dry cleaning bags. But single-use polyester bags commercially are to be banned with
Okay.
this ordinance.
And now talk about some of either one of you, I guess, about some of the environmental impacts that these bags have that you sort of made you want to take on this issue.
Want to start?
Yeah. So, well, bags are just being used by everyone. I've seen people double bag and like take their milk for 2 bags and then put it into the car and then just throw it away, or have bags left in the parking lots. And a lot of my friends are cashiers at grocery markets, and they've said like, "Oh, everyone's asking for a double bag. This is crazy. It's ridiculous." And the idea came from looking at other news that everyone else is doing a bag ban or a bag tax, and it really seemed like it was essential to have, because so many of them are being used, and like in the United States, 100 billion bags are used every year, and through estimation and calculation using the population of Burlington, it was found out that more than 13 million bags are used every year in Burlington. And that's just a staggering amount for us. And obviously we have to reduce that amount because the bags, their production requires CO2 and non-renewable fossil fuels. And everyone knows that non-renewable fossil fuels and CO2 are really harmful to our atmosphere as they add on to global warming and climate change, which is a really, really powerful topic that we need to focus on, because it's happening and it might really be a devastating effect on the earth. So the best we can do to slow down or even reduce what's happening, we're trying to do that.
And now there's some, other impacts that it has as far as where these bags can end up, and talk about that and the difficulty of recycling them.
Yeah, so these bags, sure, obviously they've been laying around everywhere. They either go in landfills or they end up somewhere in our environment, like the woods or in water, and these can be super harmful because these animals, they don't know what these bags are, so they consume these bags and they can get sick from them, because these plastic bags are really good at picking up toxins. So if a bag picks up toxins and say like a bird eats it, and it's going to get sick from it. And then in the ocean or water, if a fish eats it, bags, they biodegrade, and they don't biodegrade. They turn into something called microplastics. So they still have the toxins with them, but if the fish consumes them, they're consuming the plastic bags and the toxins with it. So this is why many scientists aren't eating fish now, because they fear that they're eating the toxins from the plastic bags the fish consumed.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that once it gets into the water, it kind of breaks down into like small particles that are essentially, but still carry all the same kind of chemicals that the bag itself had.
Sea turtles in general will just consume the bags just straight up, and as a number of other animals will. And then there's, of course, like a choking hazard with that, but it goes beyond it. Yeah, you can actually get these chemicals that the bags can release themselves, or from other sources they've absorbed certain toxins that then they carry into the organisms. Yeah.
Now, I guess the one question would be, we recycle so much, all your cans and milk jugs and everything just go right into the green bin. Why can't we just do the same thing with bags?
Well, there's these machines that help sort out recyclables in the maintenance recovery facility, which sorts out the recyclables with non-recyclables. But there's a problem because plastic bags, they can't be recycled, but instead they get stuck in these machines. So these workers have to, by hand, use utility knives and take them out, and it slows down the process of recycling. It's costing more money. It's a big issue.
So I don't think people may be aware of that. You can't just put them in with your regular recyclables because it's not the same type of material.
Right. Yeah, Massachusetts doesn't have the sorting machinery that some states may have to recycle plastic bags, but that's not present here in Massachusetts. So really, if you're just going to throw your plastic bag into like a recycling bin, it's not going to end up being recycled because it's going to have to take up so much like labor work, and then it's not going to be beneficial if you put it into a recycling bin in Massachusetts.
Right. Now talk about, so get rid of the plastic bags. What are the alternatives, and what are some of the costs associated with those?
Yeah, obviously the end goal is to see everyone using a reusable, thick, reusable plastic, reusable shopping bag.
Like a canvas bag.
Yeah, because you can buy those from Market Basket just for $1, or you can buy them from other places. I know they have other like retail options for those reusable bags, but another option is if using reusables isn't your forte, I guess, you can still use paper bags because paper is recyclable and not as environmentally harmful as plastic bags are. So the end goal is to see everyone walking around bringing 10 or 15, however many reusable bags they need to from their back of their car into the grocery store with them or any other commercial retail place they'll go into, and use those instead of the polystyrene bags that they would have taken before this ordinance would hopefully be passed.
Right, and like the canvas bags, especially if they're made of things like fabrics like cotton, those can actually be composted, so it can go back and become soil when it's no longer serving you to carry your goods. You can just compost it, which is pretty cool.
And they're more durable, less
Right.
chance of,
Exactly.
having your groceries fall out.
No need to double bag with those.
Right, exactly. So that's a good thing. But talk about a little bit, so if people don't, immediately take to using the reusable bags, there is a price difference between using plastic and paper bags.
Yeah, so paper is only a cent more, but if you think about it, a cent more is going to help the environment better because, plastic bags are much more dangerous than paper. Paper can break down, whereas plastic, if they're on land, they can last for 1,000 years. In water, they last forever as microplastics. So paper is a much safer alternative, even though it's a cent more.
I just like to add on that the shoppers aren't paying a cent. It's the retail businesses that are paying the cent to produce these bags. But even if they are paying the cents for these paper bags, they have options of an entire revenue stream from the sale of reusable cotton bags that they can sell. Because that's money coming in instead of just pouring money out for free for a consumer to use when they walk out of their store.
Now, even though, you say it doesn't go to the customer, there is, an extra cost available. Have you talked to any, I don't think anyone's concerned about Wegmans, for example, being able to handle it, but some of the smaller businesses, have you tried to reach out to any of them, or do you plan to?
Correct, yeah. We've spoken with small businesses from other towns and cities that have passed already their own bag ban and bag bill with the tax of 5 cents on plastic bags, and they've said they haven't had any kind of negative impact on anyone coming into the store and not being able to get a plastic bag. And some grocery stores are even getting really creative in the mechanisms they use for transportation of goods outside of their retail business. One grocery store has told me that the boxes that they get from produce, like banana will come in like a crate, like a cardboard crate. They leave those in a little bin, so if a shopper wanted a container for their items, if they're carrying multiple small items, they can just take one of those boxes to take out with them, free of charge. And I don't know if you have been, but in BJ's Wholesale, they have an entire cart of just free boxes. It's listed there, and I've seen many shoppers take their small like toothpaste and stuff, and they'll put them into one of those boxes and walk out with that box.
And have you been able to get any feedback from Burlington businesses?
We are hoping to contact them really soon.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That'll be good to sort of hear from them, I guess, as well. But you have talked to some Burlington organizations, government organizations. Where have you been, and what's the reception been like?
So we've talked to the Conservation Committee and the town selectmen. The Conservation Committee, they approved unanimously, and the town selectmen will have a vote soon.
Yeah, an upcoming meeting. So, and ultimately, what's the process for this?
The end goal is to get to town meeting. From town meeting, we need to get a 2/3 majority vote of the town representatives for this bill to be passed, and then go into effect 6 months after its enactment date or passing date. So we're doing all these meetings with town selectmen, conservation commission, maybe even the Chamber of Commerce, to get their approval and use as a persuasive tactic when we're speaking with town representatives at the town meeting. So when they do vote for it, hopefully they'll vote in favor of it, and more than 2/3 will vote, so this can be passed.
And as a club, what other kind of plans do you have to get the information to town meeting members, to voters? You're going to be at events or anything, or what kind of
Email.
Yeah,
activist part of
I definitely think email is going to be a huge part. We've already started emailing some representatives. I've talked personally to some representatives to see what they think, and so far they've been really happy what we've come up with. So I think emails and talking personally is probably the best way we're going to contact them.
Yeah, and we're also told that town meeting members will be having a re-election coming up in a month. After their election's over, there'll be a released list of the town meeting members on the burlington.org website, and from there we'll be able to see their emails and phone numbers and hopefully get into contact with them and hear what they have to say about this ban before they vote on it in the town meeting. We've also seen that a lot of students even know town meeting representatives, which they didn't even know were representatives, because a lot of them are parents, and Ricky's mom is actually a town representative, and we're talking with them word of mouth, and so far we received great enthusiasm for it from all the representatives that we've spoken with.
Definitely.
And now, what would be, say someone's a little bit skeptical, what would be kind of your elevator pitch or your argument to sort of persuade somebody?
Yeah, I mean, single-use polyester bags are just piling up over and over again. But you may think, oh, what am I going to be walking out of the store with? I hope you realize that there's still going to be the paper bag option. It's not going to be like you're left holding all your items in your hands walking out of that store. You'll still just be going to the store, and instead of using a single-use polyester plastic bag, which is harmful to the environment, you'll be getting another kind of bag, which is a paper bag. Hopefully the ones who are more enthusiastic about the environment or see that it's good to use reusable bags will bring in their reusable bags and walk out with those. But it's not going to be that you're left with nothing to walk out with. It's not going to be as much of a major impact as it may seem to you. Just plastic bag will be eliminated, but there's still the paper bag.
Right. I read a news article actually, and I can't remember when they instated using the plastic bags. It might have been the 80s. But people were upset when they started using plastic bag over paper, because they were using paper at the time. Then they started switching to plastic because it was cheaper. And people were upset because it didn't stack right in their trunk, and they were real upset that everybody was switching to plastic. So I think it has to do with the change and people not necessarily wanting to adjust to a change. But this is one in what it's almost like retroactive, in which people were upset that they were losing the paper, and now we're going back to paper and people are upset they're losing the plastic.
Right.
So I think it's one of those things too where people need to keep an open mind and realize, yeah, I mean, there will be some changes, but I think we'll be very surprised at how fast everybody adjusts to this new thing. And, also the quality of the bags is better. You feel a little better, coming in, knowing that you're not creating a little more trash. I don't know. I'd imagine people are going to adjust just fine.
Yeah, it's just getting used to something,
Right.
A habit that we've formed, I guess.
Right.
And I guess the last thing is you're going to try to get in before town meeting. What's the time frame that you're looking at? When are you trying to get this done?
We'd like to be in the town meeting in May. However,
If there is an issue and we don't get on May, we can definitely try to get it on September, and that way we have more of a chance of getting an approval.
Yeah. May's the long one, so
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you have to sit through a few different sessions.
but May is also closer to this date, so
That's true.
the quicker we can get this passed, the quicker we can start banning these plastic bags, and no more will they be used and produced. So we want to get this done as quick as possible. So if it happens in May, it'll be really great. If it happens in September, it'll still be awesome. Just we want to push for the closest date that we can.
And, so you took on the plastic bags as number one. Anything, other ideas brewing among the club members of what you might also try to do in the future?
Yeah, so we had an agenda set out of what we might want to do with this club, what we're going to do, all the projects we might do. And one idea we've had is a plastic bottle pickup video, where sometimes in elementary schools, well, in Fox Hill, we saw there were bottles littered everywhere around the woods behind the school, and we went to go clean it up over the summer, but we're hoping to make a documentary style video, 2 or 3 minutes, just explaining the effects of plastic bottles and why it's bad to litter them. We're also looking to get into advocating for animal rights and
yeah, just humane rights. Factory farming is a huge problem, but most people really don't realize that these animals aren't being treated right, the animals that they're eating. So we're going to try to take a step forward. We're not going to end factory farming at just us. So we want to take a step forward and try to see what we can do to help it out.
Yeah. Excellent.
I think it's just important also to realize, like, the fact that these dudes are so into this and they are younger, but they don't want to just come in and just tell people what to do. They want to go through the process the actual legislation. They want to do it right, and they want to do it with small incremental changes. I think that's something to be said. It's almost like a wisdom by them to know that they aren't naive and just being like, well, we're going to change it all, because especially, the whole sophomoric definition, right, is like a person that thinks they know a lot, but there's actually a big lack of knowledge. I don't see that in these two. They seem to really know that they want to make change the right way. They want it to be something that's progressively better and better for the community that they're in. It's one of the things I'm proudest about them for.
Yeah, it's always impressive to see younger people, getting involved and taking on something important. So I think that's all the questions I had. I didn't know anything that I hadn't touched upon that jumps to mind. And you guys are sort of, the ones in the weeds on this, so.
I feel like we really brought home the fact that we're working on a single-use polyester plastic bag ban, and hopefully it'll be voted on in May or September. And when it's voted on 6 months after, all plastic bags will be eliminated in Burlington. It'll be illegal to dispense single-use polyester plastic bags from retailers and take them out with you. It'll be only paper and reusable from then on.
And what would the enforcement mechanism be?
The enforcement of this process is the first time, the enforcement officer is the town administrator. So it's not like the town administrator is going to be walking business to business to business, checking knocking down their door, being like, what are you using? What's your mechanism of doing this? Once they get notice that a store isn't using or isn't complying with the ordinance, they'll write them the first offense is a written warning from the town administrator's office. The second offense is a $100 fine. And subsequent offenses are $100 added on to the last one. So say this is your third offense of not being in ordinance, not complying with the ordinance. Then you have to pay $100 plus $100, $200, and then the fourth time would be that $200 plus another, so it's $300. And I keep going on like that, and hopefully no one will be not complying with this ordinance, but all this will be really annoying to them, so they must comply with it.
Yeah, it adds up fast, and it's something you can't really hide. I mean, it's just right there at the front of your store,
Especially
literally.
the big stores,
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I think that just about sums it up for now. Thank you guys for coming on and sharing your thoughts and explaining to our viewers sort of what you're doing and what they can expect to see coming down the pipeline for town meeting.
Definitely, thanks for having us.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So there you have it, a couple of enthusiastic students working to make a difference. We now go to my talk with BACC President Rick Parker, who, while not opposing a move away from plastic bags, does urge that Burlington small businesses must be taken into account and their voices be heard. Here is that interview. All right, I'm now joined by Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce President Rick Parker to talk about the business side of things in regards to this issue. Rick, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Rich. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So, I mean, just trying to get a sense from, the perhaps concerns that, might come from the business side is when any kind of changes are made at the government level that affects them. Just your overall thoughts about, making sure that, the businesses are heard from as, this debate continues.
Yeah, I think, and I appreciate you having me on. I think it's important that whenever we look at any changes, whether it be through legislation or just through the economy, it's important that we see all sides of the story. And all too often, when there's an issue that impacts business, the larger businesses are able to rally and speak for themselves, and they have a voice. But all too often, it's the small businesses that are they're busy just trying to get work done and compete in a market that's becoming increasingly hard to compete in. So we keep an eye out for issues that may impact any business, but keeping an eye specifically on the small businesses.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of different, pressures coming at them at this time, as far as, possible changes that, are going to be mandated by either the town or the state. Talk about some of the issues they're facing, or some of the changes they're facing.
Yeah, well, we're seeing there's a ballot initiative to address the Fight for 15, where the raising of the minimum wage will eventually go up to $15 an hour. The impact of that on small business is significant. We're already in an area here in Burlington where we're close to New Hampshire, where they don't have the sales tax, which impacts our ability to be competitive, but also they're not paying time and a half on Sundays. When you look at how it's going to impact small businesses, there will be some businesses that won't be able to afford some of the labor force that they have now, and you may see them forced to drop an employee, or even worse, reevaluate whether they can remain profitable.
And now, the proponents of the bag ban point to a lot of communities that have passed either bans or the initiatives to add a price to the plastic bags. But there have been examples of some communities that have gone the other way that you are aware of, correct?
Yes, I think we saw it recently in Winchester, where it was really a hotly contested issue. I think, seen from one perspective, and we all look, we're trying to do what's right for the planet. And all of the people involved. But there are unintended consequences sometimes with things like this that we don't really look at and see at first glance. All things taking into consideration, the small downtown shops in Winchester really rallied against it, because they're competing against online sales, and it's the same thing here in Burlington. They're competing against online sales, an increased market there where some of these online sales aren't taxed, so they're already up against a 6.5% deficit there. And then having other things mandated, and it's almost like death by a million cuts. So we just asked to be able to hear the voices of the small businesses. And when it comes to issues specifically like this that are mandated, the consumer has always had the choice. They've always had the choice in most places, paper or plastic, and they also have a choice of buying reusable bags. And while the shift is heading that way, we're seeing additional uses of reusable bags. Certainly, the vast majority of the consumer is not opting that way. So as we attempt to legislate those choices, it has unintended consequences, and primarily on the small business.
Yeah, so ideally it would be more of a consciousness shift on the part of the consumers to make that choice for themselves, rather than impose something on businesses. If we could just encourage more people to bring their own bags, and I mean, I admit I have some and I try to as much as possible, but often forget.
I do as well. I think if you look at history, if you go back to the black and whites, and I'll be first to tell you, the world wasn't black and white, it was just the TV. For those that didn't know about black and white, you would see people with paper bags. And during a rainstorm, the bags would fall apart. So they went to plastic for a reason. They're certainly more convenient, and they do have that negative side to them when it comes to the environment. But I think there are ways to approach it from the consumer side. Being more aware, having more awareness out there for people to take an active shift in forcing the market to go that way, rather than have it mandated. And again, with some of the unintended consequences that the small business bears a competitive disadvantage again.
Now, one of the arguments is, the price difference between, paper and plastic is like a penny, per bag. And, that, is an insignificant amount, but, what would you say in response? It's something that could, add up.
Well, I think First of all, when it comes to the numbers, you gotta listen to both sides, and there's a number of different sources that will come up with different numbers for that. But there's also the storage of the bags, the using of the existing bags. There was a move at one point for biodegradable bags that were similar to plastic that may be a great option. But again, anytime that you're legislated to change in one town when your neighboring communities don't have that same legislation, it again puts you at a competitive disadvantage. And when you look at walking into a convenience store that may be, right on the Burlington or Barica line, and you have to make a choice, knowing that I can just run in and grab it, get it at this place, and not have to pay that additional cost, people will make those choices, and we want to remain as competitive as possible.
Now, to be clear, there's the initiative proposal before us is for a ban on the bags. And, some communities have gone with like an extra 15 cents, if you want plastic, but that's not the option here. But still, I would imagine if the cheaper option is eliminated, that price will be reflected somewhere, correct?
Yes. If there are additional costs in anything, they flow down to the consumer. Some of the small businesses attempt to absorb it because they know to remain competitive, they've got to try to keep their pencils as sharp as possible and keep their prices in line. What we're seeing now from especially online sales, it is becoming increasingly difficult to have a brick and mortar business that competes with online sales that won't be held to the same regulations. If it was a fair playing field everywhere, I think this would be less of a concern. And again, you can point to, it's only a couple of cents here or a couple of cents there. I think there are other ways to try to make these changes without putting the cost squarely on the business.
Now, talk about the equal playing field. Do you think it would be better if this were taken up by the state legislature? Again,
I hate for businesses to be regulated by the government because anytime this is a great community. This is a great community. We live in a great state. We're competing on a global basis here in the greater Burlington area. These companies are deciding to locate here for the amenities that are here. And it's really what's made the choice for them to come to this area. And for the small businesses, they feed off of the larger businesses with the employees that they bring and with the people that locate to the area. But we see it on a daily basis that the competition with outside activities through online sales, through other communities that don't have the same regulatory issues, the unintended consequences all too often falls on the small business. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but they're up against it right now. And some of the other issues that they face, they're trying to pay the most competitive wage that they can and still remain profitable. They're trying to find ways to supply health care for their employees where there's no longer an ability to pool resources with businesses. We're at a critical time for small business, not only in the greater Burlington area or the state, really in the country, and finding a way to remain competitive, but also viable in the community. It's all too easy to go buy things online. We know, that everyone is doing it. The unintended consequences of that are the brick and mortar stores in the community that employ a great deal of our younger population. Mm-hmm. Those jobs go away, and those are hard to get back.
Yeah, and just talk about a little bit just about, people think of, obviously people in town think of Burlington and they think of the downtown or the way that Burlington was, but I think outside of Burlington we're seen as the mall and, Wegmans, and people are like, I don't think concerned how they will be impacted by this as much as talk about some of the smaller company or businesses that, you think should have a voice in this decision.
Well, I think that's the hard part, Rich. It's getting these people to be aware that this is happening. There are challenges every day. Staffing is a major challenge in this area. Unemployment is at an all-time low in this area. So the competition for employees, especially at the minimum wage or lower wages, they don't exist. So many times we're seeing small business owners or families forced to put in those extra hours themselves. The small business owner may not be being compensated, certainly to the extent that they could be doing elsewhere. So if you add up all of these things, and with the bags coming into it, it really couldn't happen at a worse time for the small business owner.
And the last question I had is just, as this comes up and maybe gets before town meeting, what would you say to town meeting members or people who would actually make this decision to consider, or who should they talk to? What kind of information should they be aware that they should have when going in to vote?
Well, I'm a town meeting member myself.
Mm-hmm.
My own personal opinion does not, I try to listen to what people in the district want to hear. I've got to have that kind of two-world mentality going. I would say it's very easy to listen to the organizations that are well-oiled and unified. The small business owner doesn't have a voice. They're up against it. They're working as hard as they can, and I'd like to think that as a 3-time small business owner myself, and now that we're in the chamber, that we're listening to the small businesses. We have a government affairs committee. We welcome both sides. We want to hear both sides, and we want to make sure that people know that the businesses that are in this town really supply the engine to keep us viable as a town, and we want to keep an eye out for the little guy as well.
Very good. Any sort of last word of a point that I hadn't raised?
I would say you've always got to look at both sides of the story, Rich, and paying attention to what those people that can't really speak for themselves. I'm sure there are many small business owners here in town that haven't even heard about this yet. It's our job to get that out there before them. It's our job to make sure that they have a voice for whichever side that they lean. If it turns out that everyone, the small business owner, says, this is great, we've been waiting for this, we'll be all behind it. We are just the voice of those businesses in the community that think enough to get involved and give us their opinion.
All right. Very good. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. Thank you. And that's all for this edition of BNews In Depth. 2 perspectives on a plastic bag ban that will likely be before town meeting sometime in the near future for a decision. I'd like to thank my guests, global activist members Stavan Shah and Ricky Vittum, faculty advisor Michael Ress, and Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce President Rick Parker for joining me and sharing their thoughts. I also thank you for watching this edition of BNews In Depth. I've been your host, Rich Hosford, and we will see you next time.